Fire away.
How could you describe what this process was like? Matt choosing to leave and you having a new head coach.
Well, first of all, let's start with what Matt Campbell's done and meant to Iowa State University. Iowa State University needs to put a statue up on Matt Campbell at some point in time in the future because he did more for Iowa State football than anybody ever has. And although I'm disappointed that he's leaving, it's not my right to decide what is right for Matt Campbell and his family at this point in time.
Yeah.
That's a very personal decision for him, and gave him the space to make the decision that he felt was the right decision for him. But at the same time, when Matt and I talked about it, I just said, Matt, I've got to run a parallel process because I've got a responsibility to the young men in that room.
Sure.
And to our fan base and to Iowa State University. And so, we obviously moved very quickly, but the fact is I will always feel indebted to Matt Campbell for what he did for all of us. And he showed us what really this place has for potential, where in the past we maybe thought about that, but he actually demonstrated it can be done.
Did that parallel process include trying to put something together to keep Matt?
Matt, from the get-go, made it abundantly clear to both the president and to me that this wasn't about that at all. This was entirely a personal decision that he was wrestling with about, is this the time to go home and be, he's got a mother that's got cancer. Erica's mother has been sick, and so to be able to go home, their oldest daughter, Katie's going to school and college next year out in DC. And so the opportunity for all of them to be there. And so he was just abundantly clear from the get-go with us that he didn't want us spending any time on that because that didn't matter to him. This was a personal decision for him on a family level.
Emotionally, how hard was it to say goodbye to Matt Campbell?
There's tears shed.
What's that moment like after 10 years?
You're sad, but I get it. I've done this long enough that these jobs are hard and we make sacrifices that fans will never understand. We do. And he's had an amazing run as our football coach.
You mentioned
And didn't get to do it in front of his family and friends. And he had other times he could have left, and he chose not to. Matt Campbell owes Iowa State nothing because he did more than we could have ever dreamed he would do as our head coach. And so, yeah, a page turns, but none of us are here forever. And so life goes on. And that's how I just viewed it. And maybe, I've been here 21 years. It's not the first time we've gone through something like this. And, the sun will come up on the east like it does every morning, and we'll go on. And that's why I'm excited about where we're going.
Speaking of that, what do you like? What can you tell us about Coach Rodgers?
I met Jimmy several years ago. His agent invited me down to Austin, Texas. He brought in 8 of his clients, and he brought in 2 presidents, 2 ADs, and 2 search firm members. And we spent a weekend in Austin, Texas with our wives, and I got paired with Jimmy. And that's how our friendship started. And the first time I met him, he said he was already at South Dakota State and already won a national championship. And he said to me, how do I become the head coach at Iowa State University? And I told him, if you want to become the head coach at Iowa State University, you're probably going to need to go one more level before you can get here. And we stayed in contact. When I asked him why he was going to Washington State, he said, because you told me I need to go to the next level. And so, I didn't anticipate this was going to happen, this year. So it maybe happened a little sooner. But what I was really impressed with was his love for Iowa State, his knowledge of what it takes to be good in the Midwest, his work ethic. And let's be candid, one of the first people I called this morning when I was making the decision was TJ Otzelberger, because TJ knows him and worked with him. And TJ had no idea that I had been doing all this. And I just flat out asked TJ, okay, tell me. And he said, if he will come, take him.
How's the team taking it? You know, I know a lot of them.
You know, they're young, and they just got a whole bunch thrown at them, more than they could have ever anticipated when they got up this morning. That they were going to sit all day waiting to find out whether a coach they love was going to be here or not. And so, you know, in some ways, they kind of got a double shot of surprise. And I'm sure that's really hard, right? Because they didn't even have an opportunity to fully mourn. But the fact of the matter is, it's going to be better for them in the long run. And that's what I told them, to just know that there's no uncertainty now. They know what it is. Does that mean everybody's going to want to stay and play for Coach Rodgers and his staff? No. But they're not going to spend a week wondering what is going to happen. They now know what is happening, and they'll be able to make their own choices, but be able to make them in a really timely fashion. And I'm proud of the fact that we're able to do that at Iowa State for them. And they probably don't fully understand that today, but they will in the long run, because I told them all of us in life are going to have things like this happen. And most times you don't get the opportunity to have it happen that quick, so that you don't have to be left kind of in the lurch of wondering what's happening.
Who's going to coach the bowl game?
Coach Campbell and I are still going to work through that. We talked about that. We fully plan to play in a bowl game. And Matt, you know, that's the best part of this, is we've got a great working relationship. There's no animosity on either side. We're going to figure out, you know, it means something to Matt Campbell that this team goes and plays in a bowl game. And, you know, those young men right now are probably, their heads are spinning. And the thought of, are you going to play in a bowl game? You know, they're still trying to digest that Matt Campbell's leaving. And now there's going to be a new coach here, right? But we're going to play in a bowl game. And who's going to coach them, we're going to figure it out.
When do you expect Jimmy Rodgers to arrive?
So the plan is to get him and some of his staff and their families here late tomorrow night, weather permitting. We've got a private plane lined up to go get him. We recognize there's a storm coming in, so we've got to work around that. But the plan is to have Coach Rodgers meet with the entire football team sometime Sunday night, and then we'll have a press conference on Monday morning.
And what is the plan with him and his team's bowl game as it relates to your program?
He plans to have his staff coach their bowl game. I believe they're playing in the, or scheduled to play. I don't think I'm the one that's supposed to announce that, but I think they're scheduled to play in before Christmas in a bowl game. See, I didn't announce anything.
You did not.
Okay, I caught myself. But he plans to let his staff, he's not going to, but he's going to let his staff, and we'll have, I believe, one of his coordinators coach the team, his former team, in their bowl game. And he plans to be here fully working with our team.
To go back to your bowl game, is Matt considering coaching in the bowl game?
You know, great question. I don't think there's any way, we didn't talk about that, but I don't think there's any way in heck. And I would strongly encourage him not to,
Sure.
because he's got his hands full on the other end, and I want to see him be successful at Penn State. And so he doesn't need to be spending time coaching our bowl game.
So it'll be an interim coach.
Yes, and we've got time to figure that out.
Gotcha.
Jamie, 10 years ago when you first hired Matt, have you thought about that today throughout this entire process? What have you been reflecting on in regards to that?
And I'll be candid and say I haven't had a lot of time to reflect yet, because today was spent getting to where we are. You know, it sounds simple to just say we hired Jimmy Rodgers, but there was a lot that had to go into today to get there. You know, let's start with his staff, and he are going to be contacting all our players. They got all their information. They're going to be contacting them tonight and tomorrow. And I mean, there's just a lot of stuff that had to happen. So I haven't had any time to reflect. I'm sure I will eventually. You know, my initial reaction would just be, I'm proud. I'm proud of the fact that, you know, we hired somebody that probably back then nobody thought was going to be able to do what he did. And I can't tell you I thought he could do what he did. I hoped that we would have great success, but I would be lying if I said we'd have been in 2 Big 12 championship games and, you know, played in, I think, 22 of our 23 all-time sellouts are under his leadership. That I would be lying if I said I knew that, right? But I'm proud and I'm happy for Cyclone fans because there's so many Cyclone fans that dreamed that someday we could be that good in football, and we have been. And so I'm happy for them because I was here for the first decade where it wasn't like that.
You said that he would be bringing his staff tomorrow. I guess, can you tell us?
Well,
who-
he'll bring several of his staff.
Can you tell us?
I don't know. I just know he's bringing several of his staff, but he's also bringing his wife and 2 children. He's got an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old. His wife's from South Dakota. She's absolutely thrilled. We know her. My wife was with me on that trip in Austin, and so we actually, got paired together and had dinner together. And I still had her in my contacts of cell phone and her email address and what she does for a living. And so they're coming because we want them at the press conference on Monday, and we didn't want to risk them not being able to be here because of the snow. So if Jimmy can get here, his family will be with him.
What have your discussions been, I guess, about the financials in terms of not only salary, but salary pool and NIL commitments?
This feels a lot like Coach Campbell. Many have heard me tell the story that Matt Campbell shook my hand and took the job. And I said, I didn't even offer you any money yet. And he said, I don't need to know what you're offering me. I trust you. And, that's unheard of, right? And that just happened all over again. When I talked to Jimmy today to say, if Matt takes this job, would you accept it if I offered? And he said, stop. You don't even have to tell me what you're going to pay me. I'll accept it if you offer me the job because I want to be there. And I know TJ, and he trusts you, and so I trust you.
You kind of mentioned that you're happy for Cyclone fans. What would be your message to the fan base at this point?
Number one, I would say, is be really grateful and thankful for what Matt Campbell did for your university. And I think with time, most will get there. I recognize there's some hurt, right? And maybe feeling of a betrayal, but that's short-lived. Is appreciate and understand what he did for this place and what he has set us up to continue to get to go do now going forward. Number two is, I would say, is trust, I'll use Coach Campbell's line, trust the process. We acted quickly and diligently, and I have to thank Dr. Winterstein. I need to thank, I don't know what they call the new president, Dave Cook. I don't know what we call that, designee president, but I need to thank him. I want to thank David Spalding, who's going to be the interim president, and I want to thank Mike Norton from our general counsel office, because they allowed me to have the autonomy to do what we just did. And most schools would never, ever allow that to happen like that. But we felt it needed to happen that quickly for those young men in that football locker room and for our fan base and to keep our program moving forward. And so I would say be very appreciative of the administration, and I'm not talking about the athletics director. I'm talking about Dr. Winterstein, Dr. Cook, Dr. Spalding, Mike Norton, because they paved the way to allow us to actually have a fighting chance. And number three, I would say, is get ready to go, because Jimmy Rodgers is a fireball, and we're going to be good.
You mentioned the players numerous times here. How confident are you in your ability to retain those players with Jimmy Rodgers?
The fact is, the players are going to have to decide what they want to do. And what I know is we're going to have 100 and some football players on our football team next year. Okay? He went through it at Washington State. When he accepted the job, there were 69 players in the transfer portal. He had 70 new players this past year. Okay? And they are going to a bowl game, and you go look at the scores and watch any of those games. I mean, took Ole Miss to final possession down in Mississippi. Played tough with James Madison. I mean, they had a good year, given they must have went through a firestorm last year, right? Do I hope most of our players stay? Absolutely, because they chose to be Cyclones, and I hope they'll want to continue to be Cyclones. But I'm also cognizant of the world we're in today, And the transfer portal exists. Another reason why we wanted to move really quickly, so that we can get all that ironed out, so that we'll know who wants to stay and who doesn't, because we're gonna have to be active in the transfer portal on January 2nd also, right? And so I'm not naive to think the whole roster is gonna stay here. And so the other message maybe I would have been to some of the fan base is, don't panic when someone says they're leaving. I mean, that's just the way it's just is, right? And there'll be 100 and some young men on our football team next year, and we'll all be cheering for them in Jack Trice Stadium.
What was your message to Taylor Mauser?
You know, Taylor is a fine young man. I think the world of him. He is going to make him a great coach someday. But, you know, and we met this morning, first thing, and talked through, you know, what it would be like if he was the head coach. And we met later today, and, you know, I simply shared with him, this reminds me of when I had to tell TJ we weren't hiring him. And if TJ were standing here right now, he would tell you, as hard as that hurt, and it hurt, because TJ and I are very, very close. I'm the closest with him of any of our coaches. That was really, really hard for me to do back then. But if TJ was here today, he would tell you the reason he's having the success he is today is because of what he learned about being a head coach by going to South Dakota State and to UNLV. And in the end, that's what I told Taylor. You're gonna be a head coach someday, and you're gonna be a really good head coach. But to thrust you into that spot right now is gonna be a disservice to both you and Iowa State, because you don't even know what you don't know until you're actually the head coach or the athletics director. And there's some places you can learn that on the fly. You can't take a P4 job following Matt Campbell and learn on the fly. You just can't.
10 years ago when you hired Matt Campbell, it was a resounding success. What are some of the similar traits that you saw in Jimmy Rodgers that made you confident that Matt Campbell had a decade ago too?
If you want I'll tell you what TJ Otzelberger said to me.
Perfect.
He's Matt Campbell 2.0. He said he's not going to mix a lot of words. He's not going to smile a lot. He's going to be disciplined in everything he does all day long. And I said, so you really mean he's TJ Otzelberger 2.0? And he laughed and he said, you can say that, I can't say that. So, but I think that's at the core, is that you have somebody that's no nonsense driven, that just loves recruiting, loves coaching football, loves being around young men that, you know, he's helping become great citizens, and has proven he can do that and win a lot of games. The other thing I like about him, you know, and we've joked internally, there's no, this isn't planned, and some of it sometimes is by default. TJ Otzelberger, Division III athlete. Bill Fenley, Division III athlete. Matt Campbell, Division III athlete. Jamie Pollard, Division III athlete. Jimmy Rodgers had zero football scholarship offers. And he talked his way on to the South Dakota State football team and went on to be an amazing football player. And he didn't do it because he was getting NIL or a scholarship offer. He did it because of the love of the game. And I think that's what it takes to be good at Iowa State.
Anything else? All right, guys, we'll see you.
Guys, I'll just say this. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your patience. Today was a long day for everybody. And, you know, Travis camped out here all day long. And I told him someday over a beer we could have a really good discussion. But I just appreciate it. And I know I didn't get back to you, you know, and part of that just is like, what am I going to say to you guys, right? It's not my right to tell you what Matt Campbell's going to do, but I was waiting just like you to know what he was going to do, okay? And so I appreciate you just understanding that. It's not because I don't like you or I'm trying to be standoffish. It's just like, what am I going to say, right? There's nothing I could say. But every time you saw me walk by the offices, we were working